All right, in section 5.1, this is called ratios and proportions. And so here it says a ratio, the ratio of a number A to a number B is their quotient. Quotient just means that we have a fraction, okay? And it says ways of writing ratios are A to B, A with a colon B, and then here we see our fraction. So for the first examples here, it says write each ratio in fraction form and reduce to lowest terms. Okay, so in a ratio, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write 15 miles to 40 miles. And if you notice, I'm writing the units, I'm writing the word miles. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to reduce it by canceling my units, and then I can also reduce 15 over 40. I can divide both those numbers by 5. So 5 goes into 15 3 times, 5 goes into 40 8 times. For my next problem that I have here, it says let's write the ratio of 5 quarts to 3 gallons. Now, the issue that I have right here is that my units aren't the same, and my units need to be the same. So you can either go to Google, or if you just happen to know this is going to be helpful. But 1 gallon is the same thing as 4 quarts. So if 1 gallon is 4 quarts, it makes sense to say that 3 gallons would now happen to be 12 quarts. So I'm going to think of this number here as 12 quarts. Now I can go ahead and write my fraction. So this is 5 quarts to 12 quarts. I'm going to go ahead and reduce by getting rid of my units, and I can't reduce 5 and 12 by themselves, so that part will stay like that. Now, the next part here says, let's write the ratio of 8 inches to 3 feet. Again, first thing I notice, my units don't match up. But I know that 1 foot is the same thing as 12 inches. So then it makes sense to say, well then 3 feet would have to be 36 inches. So again, I'm going to get a different color pen here. Instead of me thinking about it as 3 feet, I'm going to think about that as 36 inches. So now I have 8 inches over 36 inches. I can go ahead and cancel my units. 8 and 36, I can divide them, say, by 4. 4 goes into 8 2 times. 4 goes into 36 9 times. Now, the difference between a ratio and a rate, in a ratio, the units are going to be the same. If you notice, we had miles to miles. We did some conversion, quarts to quarts, and inches to inches. In a rate, the units are not going to be the same. So 5 shrubs for every 15 feet. So I'm going to do 5 shrubs over 15 feet. I can reduce my numbers, and that's going to be 1 shrub for every 3 feet. Same thing over here on this next one. 14 lab tables for 28 students. So if I have 14 tables and we have 28 students, we can divide them both by 14. That means we're going to have 1 table for every 2 students. Okay, so the next part we have here says a proportion is when 2 fractions are equal to each other. It says the way we can check is to cross multiply. So if we take 6 times 2, that gives me 12. If I take 12 times 1, that also gives me 12. And so that is a proportion. And so we're going to figure out how to solve proportions. So the way we're going to do this here is we're going to go ahead and cross multiply. So my first step is to take n times 60. Well, that's going to leave me with 60n. Now, I need to take 24 times 15. So 24 times 15 is 360. Now, what I really want to do here is I want to solve this equation for the letter n. The way I solve this is right now I just multiplied. So I'm going to do the opposite of multiply, which is to divide. These 60s will cancel, leaving me my n by itself. And if I take 360 and divide it by 60, I end up with 6. So we're going to do that in the next couple of problems that we have here. So in the next problem, I'm going to do this the same way. I'm going to take n times 72. That's going to leave me with 72n. I'm now going to take 28 times 18. That leaves me with 504. So again, I multiplied. Now my last step is to divide. So I'm going to divide both sides by 72. That's going to leave me with my n by itself. And now I'm going to take 504, divide it by 72, and I'm coming up with 7. All right, so let's take a look at the next problem. Again, I'm going to do the same process that I've been doing. I'm going to go ahead and cross multiply. So I'm going to take 0.05 times 0.6. That's leaving me with 0.03 equals 12 times n is 12n. Now I want you to notice that my n is on the right side, but that's the letter that I'm trying to get by itself. So since I multiplied by 12, I now want to do the opposite, which is to divide both sides by 12. Okay, so I'm going to take my calculator, 0.03 divided by 12. I'm now coming up with 0.0025 is equal to n. All right, so we have another problem that's very similar. Again, I'm going to take 7.8 times 2.6. So 7.8 times 2.6 leaves me with 20.28 is equal to 13 times n is 13n. So now when I divide both sides by 13, I'm coming up with 1.56 is equal to n. So the one thing I want to point out here is it's okay for us to get decimals in our answers. Not every answer is going to be 3 or 5 or 8. Sometimes we end up with decimals, and that's fine. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at some word problems dealing with proportions. So the first problem here says a Honda Civic Hybrid car averages 627 miles on a 12.13 gallon tank of gas. It says Manuel Lopez is planning a 1,250 mile vacation trip in his Honda Civic Hybrid. Find how many gallons of gas he can expect to burn, round to the nearest gallon. This piece of information right here is going to help me set up my problems. So since we've been doing proportions, if you've noticed, we've had one fraction equal to another fraction. This piece of information is going to tell me how to write my first fraction. I'm going to say that we can go 627 miles on 12.3 gallons of gas. Okay? And so now, when I start to look at my problem, I know exactly how many miles Manuel is planning on driving. He's planning on driving 1,250 miles. Since my number on the top part of this fraction deals with miles, then my number on the top of this fraction is also going to deal with miles. And down here, I'm going to put n for the gallons of gas. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and cross multiply again. Remember, that is 12.3 times 1,250. So take my calculator, 12.3 times 1,250, and I'm coming up with 15,375 equals, now I'm going to multiply 627 times n. That's 627n. So now if you recall, my next step is to divide both sides by 627. So I'll take 15,375 divided by 627, and I'm coming up with, on my calculator, 24.521, and there's a bunch of other numbers after that. If you notice, though, the directions are telling me to round to the nearest gallon. That means they want me to round to the nearest whole number. So that means we're basically going to round to the ones position. So if it's 24.5, then we should round that to 25, and that's gallons of gas. Okay, so now let's take a look at the next problem that we have here. And it says, if a 200-pound man can have 1,000 milligrams of medicine a day, how much medicine can a 120-pound man have? Okay, so again, I'm going to set this up rather simply, and I'm going to say a 200-pound man can have 1,000 milligrams of medicine a day. Now, this other man only weighs 120 pounds. We're trying to figure out how many milligrams of medicine he can have. So again, if you notice, I'm going pounds to pounds, milligrams to milligrams. All right, so let me go ahead and cross multiply. If I take 1,000 times 120 on my calculator, I should be coming up with 120,000 equals 200 times n. Well, that's 200n. So when I divide both sides by 200, that's going to leave me with n is equal to 120,000 divided by 200 is 600 milligrams of medicine. And if you think about that for a minute, it makes sense. A man who weighs 200 pounds gets 1,000 milligrams of medicine. Well, the person who weighs 120 pounds only gets 600 milligrams of medicine. They weigh less, so they get less medicine. Okay, so the next example we have here says a 16-ounce grande shaken sweet tea at Starbucks has 1,000 calories. How many calories are there in a 24-ounce venti shaken sweet tea? Okay, so again, the idea here is that when you set up a problem like this using ratios and proportions, is that one fraction should tell me how to set up the other one. So again, my first step is one fraction equals another fraction. So we have 16 ounces, and then we end up with 100 calories. And now our iced tea is 24 ounces, and we want to figure out how many calories we're going to have now. Now again, before I even do this problem, my guess is our answer should be more than 100 calories. 16 ounces gives me 100 calories, 24 ounces should be more than that. So again, I'm going to cross multiply. 24 times 100 is 2,400. 16 times n, 16n. So again, I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by 16, and I'll take my calculator once again, and I'm going to take 2,400 divided by 16, and now I'm coming up with 150 calories is equal to n. And again, we said we should have more calories, and we do. All right, so let's take a look at the next problem that we have here. And, there we go. And it says, a self-tanning lotion advertises that a 3-ounce bottle will provide 4 applications. Jen found a great deal in a 14-ounce bottle of the self-tanning lotion that she has been using. Based on the advertising claims, how many applications of the self-tanner should Jen expect? It says to round down to the smaller whole number. Okay, so let's go ahead and use this piece of information. We know that if we have 3 ounces, we can get 4 applications. We now have 14 ounces. We're trying to figure out how many applications we can get now. So again, I'm going to cross multiply. So my first step is 4 times 14. That's giving me 56. 3 times n, again, is 3n. So if you recall, my next step is to divide. And so if I take 56 and I divide it by 3, I'm coming up with 18.6, and there's a lot of other numbers after that. But I want you to notice the directions that tell me to round down. I couldn't actually say we can actually get 19 applications. We could get 18, and we'd have a little bit left over, but we really wouldn't have enough to get that 19th application. So we can only do this 18 times. All right. So the next problem that I have here says there are 76 milligrams of cholesterol in a 3-ounce serving of chicken. How much cholesterol is in 8 ounces of chicken? All right. I hope that these problems, as you're going through them here with me, that they're becoming a little bit more self-explanatory. So we have 76 milligrams of cholesterol, 3 ounces of chicken. Now we want to figure out how much cholesterol is in 8 ounces of chicken. So again, my ounces are going to go on the bottom because that's what I had right there. So here's my milligrams. So again, my first step is cross multiply. 76 times 8 is 608. Oops. Let me get my eraser. And back in business. Okay, so 608 equals 3 times n is 3n. So I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by 3. So if I take 608 and divide it by 3, I'm coming up with 202 points in there's a whole lot of 6s. Let's go ahead and round this to the nearest tenth. If I'm going to round this to the nearest tenth, if I have 66, this is my tenths position, so I would say that's 202.7 milligrams of cholesterol. All right, and so for our last problem here out of 5.1, it says the adult daily dosage for certain medicine is 150 milligrams of medicine for every 20 pounds of body weight. It says at this rate, find the daily dose for a man who weighs 275 pounds. Okay, so I'm going to use my pieces of information that I have here. We need 150 milligrams for every 20 pounds of weight. This man weighs 275 pounds. We want to figure out how much medicine he's going to need. So again, my first step here is I'm going to take my calculator and I'm going to multiply straight across, or cross multiply, I'm sorry. 150 times 275 is 41,250 equals 20 times n is 20n. So now my next step is I need to divide both sides by 20. So if I take 41,250 and divide it by 20, I'm coming up with 2,062.5 milligrams. Okay? Now, there's a part B to this question. Part B says, if the man is to receive 500 milligrams of this medicine every 8 hours, is he receiving the proper dose? So this problem, I want to go ahead and think about it for a little bit. The first part here says it's talking about the daily dose. And now it's saying, what about every 8 hours? So I want to think about that for a minute. Is there something that tells me how many hours are in a day? Yeah, I know that there's 24 hours in one day. Okay? If this man is going to get this amount of medicine every 8 hours, what would I have to multiply 8 by to get 24? I'd have to multiply it by 3. So that means I need to take that amount of medicine, which is 500, I need to multiply that by 3. That's going to give me 1,500 milligrams of medicine. Okay? Now the question says, if we were to give him 500 milligrams every 8 hours, that means we'd give him 500 milligrams 3 times a day, which would give us 1,500 milligrams. Is that the same number as this one here? No, it isn't. So is he receiving the proper dose? Not at all.